But yeah, just starting with the introduction, your name, age, which island we're on, and then can start with can start anywhere you like. Talk about
Okay.
UH. I can talk about before, just as far as
Or
what
you
you.
can talk about when you were a kid. You can talk about where you grew up. Because
Mhm.
sometimes that informs how you got to do what you do now.
Mhm.
So my name is Lucy Kailimahuna Medrano Gay. I'm 79 years old, and we're here on the island of Oahu. My early life, I would say, was mostly influenced by my time with my grandma in Kona. And this would have been in Napopo'o, which is in the Captain Cook Kealakekua area. You're from Kona too, yeah, ya Ohana?
Mhm.
How far out?
Kailokono, my mom grew up in Holualoa,
Oh,
Makai. But we never
okay.
know. Had one Holualoa Makai. Mauka, right?
Only Malcolm.
Yeah, Makai.
Yeah. Okay. So my family is the Grace family.
Oh, I know the Grace family.
Yeah, Anton Grace, that's my grandpa. But those early times in Kona really influenced me because the lifestyle, the way of living was so different from the life here in Oahu. We had no running water. We had to live off catchment water, which meant we learned the value of water very young. You don't waste it, you know. And then it was a place where you had to develop a relationship with different segments of the community in order to survive because you didn't have a year-round resource that you could trade. So you had to work seasonally. Like, so certain times of the year, it was the coffee that sustained the family. Other times of the year, it would have been the fishing. So you had to learn how to, develop relationships in the fishing community,
If you like fish.
the plantation community where you can sell your hats and your mats and things like that. So that stuff you didn't have to do in Honolulu. Honolulu, you just go to the store, give them your money, and that's it. So I think that early childhood experience in Kona shaped a lot of my understanding about people, relationships, values, what matters. And then I had to come Honolulu because I had to go kindergarten. So that part of my life was in Palama. I went to Ka'iolani Elementary School, took piano lessons at Palama Settlement, my brother and I were able to get into the music school because of John Kelly.
No?
Yeah. So the piano lessons had a fee. You had to pay a monthly fee. And I was okay for my older brother, but with two kids, it's kind of rough. So John was able to give us scholarship. And then it was during that period of the Korean War. I think that's my first radical I ever met was John Kelly. Because he formed a choir at the music school. And the first song he taught us was the Korean, I guess it's their Arirang. Is that their national anthem or something?
Maybe.
But he get all these brown-skinned kids, tiny little kids, on the stage singing Korean song and during the Korean War.
How old are you? After
I was probably,
third
I think I was below third because I started music school when I was 5.
Mm.
Yeah. So, that I didn't really understand the impact of that, but we just did it because you should sing. It was a beautiful song. I still remember some of the words. And so he was the first radical, I'd say. And then because we lived in Palama, it was the outskirts of Honolulu back then, because anything past Middle Street was country already. So we're on the very fringe, almost the fringe. And then the house we were in eventually was torn down. It wasn't urban renewal, not at all, but it's just the house was old and it was termite eaten. And the owner of the house had a financial opportunity to do something with the land. So we all had to move out. that was a very, very difficult thing to do because we were so attached to the neighborhood. Although we moved out further west, every weekend we would still go back to the old place. And not just us, the other families too. And we would meet in the evenings on the sidewalk because there was this one appliance store that had a television, and the owner would leave it on so that, because this is the beginning of television, black and white, okay? So he would leave it on so all of us, the families, could watch TV. And the program he would turn it on would be attractive to the men folks. So it was wrestling. So I remember guys like Lutez and their big belt, he was champion. And the fathers would be standing in the back, the kids sitting on the sidewalk on the hali'i, watching. And could hear the men cheering their favorite on. But it was exciting to meet our neighbors again. And then at the end of the night, we'd all have to pack up, sadly go home, to our new place. Look forward to the next weekend. And that sort of reminded me of my grandmother, because she told me the story about what it was like for her raising my mother and two kids. My grandpa was a Catholic. So early on Sunday mornings, he would go up Mauka to the Catholic Church for Mass. My mother then would go. Then after Mass, Pau early had to come home. Grandma would go to the Kalawina Church down in Napopo'o. And so the Kalawina Church was what my mother preferred because it was an all-day affair. You go meet in the morning for the meeting, then you have lunch, then you talk story, then you play, then you go home. So it was the weekend was when people in places like Kona, who lived very far apart, would come together. So it was kind of like their main street. They could regroup, reconnect, get energized so that they could go back into the isolated backwoods and, make it to the next weekend. So that's how life was back then. So we moved out to Aliamanu, which is in the Pearl Harbor area. And when we moved out, it was like in the middle of spring. So when we had to transfer school, we couldn't get into the school nearest to our house because that already had enrollment. So the school that had opening was much further away, and that was Nimitz Elementary. Now, I come from Kaiulani School where we had bungalows for classroom, and the only concrete structure was the main building. So when I go to this new school, it's red bricks as a entry circle drive with a flag, and kids come to school on a bus. Palama, we walk. Kids come on a bus. So it's a whole cultural shock for me. And then we go into the classroom. They have these beautiful desks. I don't know how the hell to open it because never had a desk like that. No. So it was quite interesting. I was 10 years old, I think, when I went to that school. And then Nimitz Elementary. And so what happened to me, I think, was very important that period because it was the first time I really felt like it was a really different world. It's not like when I went from Kona to Honolulu. This was worse. It was something I only saw in picture books. The Dick and Jane book. You see the red schoolhouse. Yeah. So I went to this school and the brick is red. And then get all the Dick and Sally's with all their blonde hair and blue eyes.
And a dog named Spot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that, it was quite a shock.
So
to be in
like a loud class difference.
Yeah, that was very clear. It came very apparent later on in my 5th grade year when a classmate, her name was Valerie, Bickle was her last name, Valerie Bickle. She was planning a birthday party and she was going around the classroom, deciding who to invite. So the question she asked me, because she didn't know much about me, the question she asked me was, is your father an officer? Because this is a military community. Yeah? And I said, no, my father works for the Public Works. So she moved on to the next person. So then at recess time, my other good friend, Melinda Blood, she wasn't invited either because her father was not an officer. So apparently, what we learned later on was the party was going to be at the officers' club, and she wanted to make sure the rest of us were all qualified. So that's the first time I saw a separation between people based on external things, like what's your father's rank. Um, so that one was really, it was really an eye opener. But I had another experience that really taught me that not all people are like Valerie. I had another classmate, her name was Caroline. I can't remember her last name, I should remember it. But Caroline lived one street above me, and she noticed that at the end of the school day, I wasn't getting on the school bus. And so she said, how come we live just one street apart? So I told her, oh, the bus is gray, and I think it's for the Navy kids. We're not Navy kids. So she told me, you know what, meet me down at the corner tomorrow morning. So in the morning, my sister, my brother, and I would go down to the corner on Salt Lake Boulevard in Maluna Street. The bus comes, stops. Caroline says, just follow me. So we get on the bus, and the civilian bus driver says, where's your pass? And Caroline goes, oh, they knew they don't have to pass yet. So we sit down. But I knew we were going to get in trouble at some point. So we sat down. That was our first ride to school. The rest of our lives at that elementary school, my sister was first grade, I think, and my brother was first grade, my sister was second grade. So they're only like 6 and 7. And we're walking, I think, 3 miles one way to go to school and another 3 miles. And then we have to cross the Big Nimitz Highway, which is now the viaduct. Yeah. So no JPO, no traffic lights. We just got to dash across the 3-lane highway. And it's not one highway. Nimitz get two, get one going in, one going out. And then you get Farrington already. So yeah, we made it. We were still alive. Yeah, so Caroline really showed me that, she's a daughter of a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. So that kind of helped me kind of not get too upset about what Valerie did. Yeah.
So was Caroline white?
Yeah, she's white. They were all white people. Yeah. I was the only brown skin there. But we had a black teacher in the 6th grade. It was Mrs. Model. What was her first name? She became I ran into her when I was at UH. She was a counselor at Palolo Elementary School. And she was being mentored by Dr. Dan Fulmer, who was teaching people how to do family counseling. So that's where I met Ivalani Model. That's who she was. But I didn't have her for a teacher. I had a Haulika. Oh, that's the first thing. I had a male teacher. Never had a male teacher, in elementary school at Kailani. At Kailani, all my teachers were Hawaiian, from kindergarten to 5th grade. I didn't make it to 6th because we had to move out, but all the 6th grade teachers were all Hawaiians. Mrs. Boyd, I think she's the Kinau Boyd family. Mrs. Hostetler. I had Mrs. Pang from Big Island. Mrs. Dooley, I forget her name. Mrs. O'Sullivan. These were all my Hawaiian teachers. Back then, our public school teachers were primarily Hawaiian women. And it was after my generation, I think, that they became more Kepani. And I don't know if somebody wants to do the research to see at what point things went huli for the Hawaiians in public education. Because Kay Weary...
That's before statehood.
Yeah. Kay Weary, who was the financial aid director, sorry for diverting, but it reminds me of what Kay noticed as part of the huli, I think. She was the director or a member of the financial aid office at UH Manoa for many years, and she retired from there. Kay was married to a Hawaiian guy. And she, at one point, made a statement that, where did all the Hawaiian students at UH go? They're not here. So that raised a research question that Norman P. Inaya then took on. And he went through the records to see, there was a period where Manoa was a big deal. I mean, she had 1,500 kids. It was kind of big enrollment. So, but even then, with that amount of people at the UH, there was a clear reduction in the number of students coming in who were part of Hawaiian, as far as KNU and then getting financial aid. So what happened in that period? I think she said it was happening around in the 50s that there was a high number of Hawaiians, and then come the 60s, they disappear. So I was in the group with the 60s. Norman was in the 60s too. But the 50s were the ones who had all the Hawaiian teachers all the way through high school. So they made it up to UH. So somebody might want to take a look at that as a graduate research project.
Because they only did a draft in the 70s. Did they do a draft in the 60s? They did, right?
A draft was in the 60s for Vietnam.
Because I wonder if it was like early 60s or late 60s. Because if war had something to do with...
No, it would have affected all ethnic groups equally. So the rate would have gone down proportionally, yeah?
Because I thought
Should have
I
anyhow.
thought they had I mean I don't know a whole lot, but like there were documented instances of like when they basically draft more black people than white people in the States. They would basically just like try to play the draft. So I'm wondering if more Hawaiians than white people like, so if your family members go off to war or your kids go off to war, then maybe people would be less inclined to go to school or they
Yeah,
gotta work
that's
or
how-
something like
that's
that,
how
that
it
kind of
worked.
thing.
That's how it worked. But we also had
Speculating.
Hawaiians who were in college and they were still drafted.
Mhm.
I think of Hartwell Blake on Kauai. He actually died from Agent Orange. Kamehameha boy. There were several others there were Hawaiians in college and they were drafted. So I don't know. It's just systemic.
Well,
Yeah.
somebody gotta do some research.
Yeah, somebody got it. It's a really interesting thing to look at what point, how the shift in the workforce in the public schools, how that shift impacted the performance of Native Hawaiian kids.
And also the numbers of kids that moved up to college level.
Yeah.
It's okay,
Do you
so
feel like
one of the ladies
Yeah.
or whoever is gonna be
Yeah.
reviewing the
Okay.
dates, maybe they'll do it.
pick up the next research project?
Yeah.
Because did that, like you're describing the, in elementary school when you're looking at, like, you're observing the inequalities and things of that nature. Did you feel like that kind of primed you to do?
Well, it exposed me.
activism?
It exposed me that something wasn't just. Yeah, I didn't have those words.
Mm.
All I knew was what I felt.
Something's up.
Yeah. Something not right.
Did you feel like?
So it
Did you feel
motivated.
Did you feel the impetus to like go find out what it was? or,
No,
like, why
no.
you
What
feel
it
like
did was it motivated me to do the best I could do. So I beat everybody I could, academically. I replaced the captain of the JPO, who was a guy named Dallas, Holly Boy. I became the queen of Mayday. I became the spelling bee winner for the school. I had the highest grade in the whole class. Carolyn was after me.
Valedictorian.
This is elementary school when it was first happening to me. So I had this attitude about being, I'm not gonna let the external things limit me. My father not one officer, he not in the military. That don't matter. That's not who I am. So it pushed me. And sometimes it's not too good because I can become a little bit competitive, and it's not good. Especially when, I know relationships really are the most basic thing for just living. But that competitiveness,
You liked it.
yeah. Because, it was the only way I could get back.
Good?
Yeah.
Did you go straight to college after?
Yeah, so from Nimitz Elementary, I went to Kamehameha School. I got in at the 7th grade. And then I was there for 3 years. My oldest brother, meanwhile, was accepted and went to Stanford. Now, I come from a family where my father only went 6th grade and my mother went 3rd grade. They have no clue what is college.
That's what
They
Eric,
never-
Eric's mom too, only 3rd grade.
And they have no idea where. My father thought Hawaii was one day away from Manila. Had no idea of geography. So, and my mother and father had no idea how far the big, Bainan is. And back then it was like a 12-hour flight, the propeller kind plane. So we were really, if you talk about first generation kids being disadvantaged, they don't even describe the parents of the kids who were coming up in the 50s. It was a different world. The world didn't even, that other world couldn't even imagine it, So they sent my brother up to San Francisco. All we heard was, it's mainland cold because the books we read get snow, yeah, all that kind of stuff. They get seasons. So they buy warm clothes. And what's warm for us? The kind of shirt she wearing. That's warm. My brother get up there, it's damn cold. And then he gets into San Francisco. He got to make his way to Palo Alto. The furthest we've gone on a car ride is around the island. My father used to take us all the time around the island. But to go to a place like that, and he got there. So his experience when he got there was in some way, Kamehameha prepared him, but in many ways it didn't. So he gets there and he writes home to my parents. And he says to my parents, while he was, my brother would, I'm going to brag about him. He was an athlete, a scholar, a music prodigy. He was just everything. I think I'm competitive. So he got into the school all on his own just by testing. There was nobody at Stanford who was part Hawaiian, had association with Hawaii, and can speak for Hawaiian kids to get into these blue ribbon schools. He had to do it all on his own with no one there to help it. So while he's there, he writes home to my parents and he says to my parents, you know what? My schooling never really prepared me for this competition up here at this level.
Was this still a trade, still technically a trade school?
Stanford?
No,
Oh,
Kamehameha.
Kamehameha was for the industrious men and women. College was not something they pushed.
So what happened?
So he writes the letter home and he says to my parents that we need to take one of us, the younger kids, out of Kamehameha because we were all at Kamehameha. So we got to get one of them out because they're not going to be prepared. He wanted us to succeed. So the one after him was a junior. And it was too late to take him out. The sophomore one, he didn't get in. He was at Radford. Then came me, and then my two younger ones. They were 7th grade, too young yet. So I was the one that was not chosen, but it was just that was the situation. So he told my parents, take me out of Kamehameha and then send me to another school. So my parents have no clue where the hell this other school is. It's Punahou. So we don't even know how to get there, what it takes to get in. So my father, who was a plumber back then, his plumbing shop was on Yonge Street. So because he kind of figured out, okay, the school must be somewhere around there. So one Saturday, after my piano lessons at Palama Settlement, I get on the bus and I tell the bus driver, I don't know how to get to Punahou School. You can tell me how. Says, you sit over here and I tell you when you're going to need one transfer. Okay, so he told me where to get off and where to wait. And I'm like, wait, because it's a long wait. So I said, oh, okay, well. He said the bus going up Malcolm. So I walked. I don't know how far I had to walk. I walked. When I get to the school, I know where the entrance, because there was lovely lava rock arch. So I go through that. It's a Saturday, nobody there. I go to this building that looked like Bishop Museum. It's all lava rock. The door open, I go inside, and there's a woman there. I think she's a secretary or clerk or something, Hawaiian lady. And I tell her, this is the Punahou School. She tell yeah, this is the school. I said, I come here. And she said, I think you better talk to the man in there. So she walks me into this. I don't know who he was. She walks me down, so we have this conversation. And sort of like, where did this girl come from just off the street? So I had stopped at I had my books in my arm because every Saturday I went to the library. So he asked me to show him the books I was reading, and I didn't have any pattern. I just picked whatever books. So he looked at it and it was, I guess in his mind was, wow, she has a broad range. He didn't know it was all,
Accident.
yeah, there's no structure to this thing. So then he explains to me that I have to take a test. And I said, okay, we go. No, you got to come back another day. So I take the test, and the day I take the test, I meet this girl, who's got a British accent. She's just as lost as me, and her father was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. They had just come from Singapore, moved to Hawaii, and her mother drops her off, and I'm standing there next to her, and the mother says, "I'll be waiting across the green." The hell is that? Across the green? It's just a whole different world. So she and I become good friends, and Jody Watson. And we take the test, and both of us get admitted. So we end up first day of school, we're in the same homeroom. So at least I'm not all by myself. And that was a big change to leave Kamehameha and go there, because I wasn't supported by Kamehameha. When I had to report to the main office that I needed my transcript, Dr. Fox, who was the principal, overheard me saying that at the counter, and she had me come into her office. I guess they sent the transcript, but she needed to talk to me. And basically tried to get me to rethink my decision that I might not belong there. Then I go to my piano class with Miss Lucille Delaney to tell her I'm not coming back for piano. And she asked me, "Do you know what a cashmere sweater is?" Never heard of the word. My mother crochet on her sweater with yarn from Crest. So I said, "No, I don't know what that." She said, so she was her message to me was, "You're going into a place you don't belong." Well, I listened to my brother more than you guys. So that was my story, how I got to that school. And
You stayed.
I stayed. I
You
finished.
graduated.
62. My class isn't very famous because I just got the bulletin. We get this monthly bulletin from the school, and they put, you get to report what you're doing at your classes. So they go by class. The class of 62, either we don't have any reports, or reports are like that. We're a terrible class. Either we know like brag, or we know more stories to tell, or we know more money that we know can go do all these fancy things that other guys are doing.
So how was it for you
I met up with a bunch of Hawaiian girls
at Punahou?
at Punahou, yeah. Let's see, who were some of them? There was the Marcial girl. There was Campos. I recognized that name because the Campos Dairy in Waimanalo. No, in Kaneohe, so I remember that one. And then there was another girl from Kamehameha that got in. She was a class above me, Pat Colburn. So I knew her. And this lady, her mother was the social worker at Queen Leokalani Children's Center, Betty Ann Rocha.
Oh.
She was one class above me. So there was a bunch of Hawaiian girls who were at the school. And somehow we found each other. And you know where we hung out? In the basement bathroom of the main building. That was our hangout, yeah.
Did you went to college right after?
Yeah, I went to college.
Did you
So
go to UH?
I went to UH, and that was a story in itself. My father, I said, had been working for the Navy. They had gone through RIF, what they call a reduction in force. And that means people lose their jobs. But if you got what you call seniority, or veteran status, you're protected. My father had neither of those. So, but what he had was high security rating. And he took care of the Kuniang underground. And you have to be really high security. And
Is that the place that they pretend doesn't exist? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We know what that is.
so my father had that rating. And what he was willing to do was take a cut and pay so he could keep his job. And they needed him. So they had to explain, yeah, well, we need this guy, but we have to let him go because he won't meet the requirement. But we got to keep him. So my father took a reduction. And the lesson I learned from that continues to today, and I teach it to my son. And the lesson I learned from my father is it's better to have a small check than none at all. I think there's some people today, they don't like work for $6, $7. They think it's too little. But it's better to have something than nothing. Because you can make something out of something. You can't make something out of nothing. Yeah. So I learned that lesson. So at that time when it was happening, to keep the family going, we had to make a lot of change. My mother went back to weaving hats, a skill she learned as a young lady growing up with my grandma. So she started making kona hats back then. And so my sister and I had to learn how to do the same thing too. And then my brothers had to go sell newspaper. My oldest brother, he had to go help my father on the weekends to get extra money. And my mother went to work at the cannery. So times were hard. And so the question was, do I go mainland and Admiral Price? And then we never had financial aid. You got to remember that. Never had financial aid. It was called National Defense Education Act, I think, back then. And all it was loans. But we had none of that. So we had to take care of my oldest brother, had to take care of me, get to school. So I said, I'll stay home. And you know what? I think that was the smartest decision, to stay home at UH. Because I think had I gone to the mainland, I don't think I would have come home. You know?
Why do you say that?
Well, because the opportunities, it's like everybody who goes to the mainland, you begin to see it's a bigger world. There are many more opportunities. You know, over here, only get one system of higher ed, really. The others, you know, they're there, but they're not that resourceful. Look at Hawaii Pacific. You know, at some points, they had to let go. And Hawaii Loa, it disbanded. Yeah. So the probability of coming home is more reduced, I think, when you go away.
Do you think that that decision, like part of what shaped that decision, is also what led you to want to do
Well,
the kind of community engagement
I think
stuff?
staying at UH, I had courses that I would not have had on the mainland. Like we had courses in Hawaiian language. I had Hawaiian literature with in translation with Ruby Johnson. I studied with Mrs. Anthony. I met Dr. Emery in my first year in Hawaiian studies, Hawaiian language. We didn't have Hawaiian studies. I was exposed to anthropology, and it wasn't anthropology of Europe. My anthropology teachers somehow came back to the Pacific, you know. And I had Pacific literature with Dr. Day, Grove Day. So I think staying here really helped me get more grounded into my, you know, the academic part of the Hawaiian people.
Do you consider yourself an activist?
No, I consider myself an educator. Yeah. Because I think the word activist has the nuance of being in protest, in being, like you said earlier, a resistor, a revolutionist, sort of stuff. And I remember when I first ran into Solly Niheo and I first ran into each other was the Kalama Valley protests. And he met me at a hamburger place on School Street and Nu'uanu. There's a corner there that had a shopping center, a little shopping area. And we happened to just be there. And I remember him saying to me, come join us at Kalama. And I said, Soliano can do that. I'm going to do my change to education. I made it really clear right there, and I declared that. So I see myself more as educator. And in my position here, that's how I define what I do. It's about bringing sometimes old knowledge, sometimes new knowledge, sometimes useless knowledge to the community, using the wealth and the resources of the University of Hawaii. I'll give you a specific example. When we were trying to stop the community was trying to stop the windmills on Palihua. There were a few people here who wanted that. Even people like Kamaki was against it. And the people who were proposing it held a community meeting. They were going to hold one. They employed the kids at Nanakuli High School to do a rendition of what it would look like. And kind of like say, well, your own young people don't see a problem with this. So what I did was, with my kupuna, we started to look at this and ask questions about it. So the question was things like, well, they're telling us it's going to be this high. How high is that? So to start thinking about what does the word high means. And when they told us the actual footage, I said, how are we going to imagine that? So we had to call the city planning office, ask them for the tallest, building in Honolulu that meets city standards. And it turned out to be the Bank of Hawaii on Bishop Street. And so he told us it was about 400 some feet. Okay, so how many stories that? So he told us the number of stories. So one day I was sitting at Pro City parking lot, waiting for my son to pauhana. Get the 2 towers there by Sam's Club. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to count the floors. Not easy because your eye go sometimes kapakahi. So I have to start how many times over and over until like bottom. Or maybe if I come from the top, my eye will get jam up. But I figured it out. The tower was about as high as what they said the towers were going to be like, the windmills were going to be like. So came home, told the kupuna, when you see those 2 towers, I saw the thing will be on the mountain, tall like that. At that point, it was the reality sunk in. It's something that they could visually see and not have to imagine. Because the kids in Waianae, they imagined it. There was no proportion. There was no ratio. I should say proportion. There was no ratio of the height that they drew it at. Like 1 inch, is it 12 feet? Or is 1 inch 1 feet? What is it? They didn't do that. So although they showed the picture to us at the meeting, it was meaningless. But when I said it's the height of the 2 buildings over there, you guys see, where everybody could see that. And then the other thing they did was they said it had to be up on that mountain in that spot because it had the right winds conditions. So here at the college, we taught a class called Geography of Hawaii. And Walter B. had the textbook on her shelf. So she pulled it out because she said she remembered there was a chapter in there about weather. So when we went through the book, we saw a map. And it was a map of the wind patterns over the Waianae Range. And it had on it, and you go look in the back, it identified who generated that map. Turned out it was a University of Hawaii graduate student, Japanese guy. So we said, okay, we will call it Geography Department. Summertime, nobody around. So the secretary says, well, the chairman will be back and she'll leave the message. So he returns the call in a timely way before the meeting. And he says, yeah, this student, he remembers this student who drew the map. And the question we had was, what was the basis for his information? Was it winds that were high up, the windmill going to catch, or what? What was the elevation? Surprise to us, we go to the meeting. and we tell the guy, what's his name? He was the spokesman for the Hawaiian Electric guy. He said, you guys bulayas. This wind pattern you guys refer to, it's not from way up there. This wind pattern is the guy who did the map. He went up the mountain and he looked at the trees, how they bend. So it's just a few feet off the ground. And you're basing your thing on, you're hoping that you'll get the same wind on the top. So that was one thing the university did for us, that knowledge that they brought in. The second thing they did was that chairman of the geography department said to us that when you put windmills up, they can shear the winds, and how the effect of that would be on the current, the ocean just below. I didn't know that, but that knowledge he shared with us. So we shared that with the fishing community. It would basically make that a dead zone. It would be like the, what do you call that area below the equator? It's a dead zone. There's no wind pattern, The doldrums. The doldrums. It's going to be like that. If there's,
I didn't know that's where that came from. Like somebody's in the doldrums.
yeah, and that's why. Did you know that's why they get the earring? The mariners get the earring. So all these guys running around with earrings on their head for sending out a message. That's not the history of it. That has to do that they survived the doldrums. Then they get the earring. Yeah. So anyhow, that's a mariner's tale. So we tell them that there's going to be, it's not just a matter of you're going to get wind for electricity. You're going to harm the ocean current. You're going to harm our fisheries. You're going to create this. So you cannot put your windmills close nearby the ocean. You got to think about that. And then we saw their map showed where the winds were really strong. How come you're not putting them up on the Ko'olau Mountain? His answer was, because the footprint is too narrow up there. So they need a wider space here. So my thought was, engineers can solve any problem. It's not a problem, But that's for them to figure out.
That's environmental
Yeah.
racism.
But the end of it was, that was just two of the things that the university did to help the community. The other aspects were the kupuna, like Walter B. Guys, who told the story of Maui, and how when they described the positioning of the 26 windmills, Walter B. said, you guys can put kakio on top Maui's thigh. And the night of the meeting was a full moon night. So all people had to do is go outside of the cafeteria, look up the mountain, and imagine all the kakios up there. So that kind of helped, I think, bring an end to that idea of putting windmills on the Waianae Range. Unfortunately, it ended up in Kahuku. And it was not intended, but that's where they went. Kahuku has to find their own way to argue that one out. But,
the degree that you got at UH was in education?
no. I started out in education, and after 2 weeks in the orientation class, I went up to Dr. Lampard, and I said, Dr. Lampard, I don't think I belong in this class. Yeah, so he told me, well, you can get out. It's too early. You're not going to get penalized. There's only 2 weeks yet. So, but you got to go down to the counseling office at Bachman Hall to figure out what you want to be. And that's another story. I went there. It wasn't helpful. They gave me a test, and it said, you're good for occupational therapy. You're good for therapy. I go, okay, what the hell is that? I don't know, And it didn't fit me. So I had my discussion with the counselor, and I said, I'm still at a loss. So the recommendation was go into the College of Arts and Sciences and go find yourself, young lady. So I went there, and I kind of played around my freshman year. My sophomore year, you got to declare your major. So all I knew in my head was, I don't know what the career or profession would be, but what I wanted was from my elementary school. I want to learn the most I can, gives me the broadest background and understanding. So I narrowed it down to 3 areas. I would either major in history, because it would give me the story of mankind, or it would be in literature, which would be a way of taking all that broad stuff and maybe, honing it down to some basic themes or philosophy to think about what were the great thinkers thinking about. So it had to be one of those three. And I looked at who my teachers were, and the ones that really impacted me was not my philosophy teacher, because it was a class of like 75 guys. I really didn't get any real intimacy with that class. And the history class was a bigger class. I think it was in the varsity theater, the theater kind, yeah.
Right.
That's no good. And then, so my English teacher was a Reformed Jew. And he made us read. He really made me think. He made all of us think. Our assignments, it was rhetorical writing. Our assignment was to read all these very disparate articles. There's no connection. Our task was make one. So he really forced us to think deep. And I really enjoyed that. So I said, okay, I'm going to be like Dr. Alexander. That's how I picked my major.
So you did English?
I did English literature. Yeah.
So would you say that, since I think most people that we talk to don't consider themselves activists in not in the strict sense, but it sounds like what you're saying is like your role, even though it sounds like you do support, like when Kalama Valley was going off and and all these other things are happening, they're framed in this political way, this kind of oppositional way. Your role is to help people think, like to help shape people's critical thinking.
Yeah, real clearly. That's what I actually did with my class that I was teaching here. It was a how do they say, it's a complimentary class. In other words, there's no fee, there's no registration, there's no credit. It's just you come because you want to learn. So it was a basic computer class where I reached out only to Kupuna for students, and I helped them discover how to use the internet to get information. Along with that, I introduced them to some real basic things about critical thinking. It's real pidgin, I'm gonna tell you. So it goes like this: first you gotta know how to identify what the other person, what anybody else is saying. What are they claiming? So that's the key. And the way I taught them that was I had them read the newspaper, and when they read the article, okay, so what the hell is the article about? What is he saying? So they learn how to identify claim. Then afterwards, I said, now you got to think critically about it. How you do that? You go like this. Nah. For real? Who said? Really?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and for what? And why would they say that?
So that's how I taught them critical thinking. So if somebody comes up and says, this light industrial park up here going to create a lot of jobs for our people. And it's taking lands that's not, it's wasted land. So we're going to make it useful. So they go apply that critical thinking. Nah. For real? For what? And then they start understanding and they start shaping what it is that they're wanting for themselves. Because the whole idea is to teach people that they can create their future. It's not, you don't have to be like in my elementary school. You don't need to be just reactionary, They do this to me. Get ahead of it. Create your own future.
Is there a primary thing that motivated you to do this kind of work in this way?
I don't know if there was one thing, but what I noticed was I got the sense that things were being done to people. Sometimes they're wool pull over their eyes, using sometimes money to pull people over to one side without thinking about the what they're leaving behind, you know. Just as an observer of what was going on at community meetings, neighborhood board meetings, I could see some of this going on, and not to say that people didn't see it. I think they did, but they didn't know how to.
Respond.
They needed to have a voice, their own voice, how to control the conversation. So I remember one neighborhood board meeting, they asked the Purple Spot guys, the industrial guys, they asked the community, they dare ask the community, oh, tell us what you think we ought to do with that land. This was at a committee meeting. So everybody go around the circle telling these guys what they think the land should be used for. Come to me at that. No, do nothing. Leave them alone. Well, you ask me, I'm telling you. So you don't have to tell them what they want to hear. If they ask you the question, tell me what to do, or tell them, you know. And don't be scared to do that, because they gave you permission to do that. And so it was that kind of stuff that I saw, that people felt like they needed to find their voice and to take control of the conversation. It was theirs. It's not theirs just simply, they come and ask and it's their conversation. I want to do this with your land. No, it's you take control of it. We had another similar one with the quarry back here, when they were trying to turn that into a landfill. And they mentioned a similar thing, you know, what do you guys want to do? And we said, leave it alone. There's other things you can do, a big hole in the ground. So anyhow, that's, I think, there's no one thing, no one event. I think it's accumulation of observations that helped me figure out what the university could bring to the community, contribute to the community to make it more effective. Yeah.
How do you feel personally, like whether it's just, you know, emotionally connecting to people or, you know, the physical aspect? Does it feel like good for your health to be doing this kind of work?
Well, the one thing I do know health-wise is you don't get as much sleep as you used to, you know, it's important because the minimum hours of sleep is at least 7, 8, 9 hours if you can get it. Anything less than that, you're going to see your body breaking down somewhere. So if there's one place where I think getting involved in educating communities, whether it's through influencing leaders, mobilizing people, bringing in experts to help supplement. It's in the planning phase, the designing phase. You're going to have to spend time, and then making the phone calls. Yeah. So it's all that pre-work that takes time, and it's gonna rob. The word rob me was sleep, and because I don't live in the community, I drive to this community, and so there's all that extra hours there that I lose to my sleep. Yeah. But health-wise, I'm very healthy. I walk every morning. I've been walking here more than 20 years, every morning at the mall. And along the way, some of the kapunas walked with me, and then they all dropped out. I'm still walking. So I get my morning exercise every morning. And I eat well. Just I don't get enough sleep. That's the thing.
Do you experience like stress and rage in this kind of work?
No, I'm pretty good at that. Managing stress. There are things, I think the way I try to balance it is when I'm in the community, it's the other people that my energies are directed to. So to balance it, I have to do something for myself, just me. And then I think if I do this part with that, I manage the stress. So for me, what I do alone is I like to sing when I'm driving home. I turn the radio up and I close all my windows and I just sing up. Nobody hears me. The other thing I do is I like to play my piano. And I like to work in my garden. I think the garden is the best therapy for me because it teaches me to be patient. And life has a cycle. There's a part where you gotta, you know, massage the land. Yeah, you gotta feed the land. Then you can put little bit kernels in there to seeds to grow. And then once you do that part, you gotta still water, and then you just wait, and it'll come. It'll
What's
come.
something you don't eat the fruit?
Oh, I do.
I mean, sorry. There's a quote. I can't remember where from, but something like, you don't eat the fruit the same day you plant it.
Oh no, you
kind
can't.
of,
Patience is
Yeah.
big. Yeah,
Seasons.
yeah. So that's where I think my balance comes from. Is not recognizing that there's balance has to have two parts to it. And the way I kind of think of it in my mind is others and me, many and one, together alone. The flip side of the coin, and that has to be balanced, and it's balanced by things that you do. So that's me.
Do you think sorry, my brain just circuited out. Do you think that your like when you started out describing the community out in Captain Cook in Konosai, that kind of idea of not the idea but the practice where everybody had a certain role to play in a different season, everybody had to prioritize those relationships and having consistency every week to make sure everybody's needs were fulfilled. Would you think of that as kind of like the same framework that you apply in this work with education?
Yeah. So one of the ways I can describe that is through water. So in Kona, when we wash our hair, we don't wash with water from the tank. We go down to the well by the beach. We get brackish water. So that's where you wash it. Because what you're learning there is that everybody gotta wash hair. Because we swim a lot, right? We're right by the beach. But you're not going to go take the water from the tank because you want nice, smooth hair. You're going to take the brackish water, go get coconut, the old coconut, chew the darn thing, put them into your hair, get coconut oil. And when you use the brackish water, it just flows. It's just like conditioner, So you're preserving water for the whole, and you're sacrificing one small, unimportant thing for the rest. Washing your hair not going to kill you, But not having water might kill you. Yeah.
I think we have a couple.
Oh, and the thing about my health, I had my blood work just done just a couple weeks ago. All good numbers, perfect. No cholesterol, no high blood, no diabetes. What else get? All good. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, is there other things that are on your mind about your work or the impact of your work? Anything that you feel particularly proud of in how you've been engaged and helping people to, like how you said, helping people to think critically?
I think there's a couple of things. One is I've seen a couple of, in fact, we're going to feature this tonight. Seen a couple of young people stand up because their parents were there in the struggle, and the kids came with the parents, and now they're standing. So I'm thinking of like Angela Offie-Kruve and her boy Ethan, especially that little one. So that's a good thing, and there are plenty more like that where the kids came with the parents. I think my biggest contribution to the community was just this very facility, because it was a big struggle to get the university to recognize their commitment to this community. I don't know if you know the story, but the Waianae Nanakuli Education Center has a long history going back to Model City time, when the federal government invested in poor communities. And one of the the sectors was in education. And for us in Waianae, it was looking at the guys who never finished high school. Can we get them into an education center where they can continue their education, get their diploma, so they can get on with their life? That's what the education center started out with. So it was in the hands of DOE, adult ed. But once the federal monies dried up, they abandoned it. They didn't want to. They wouldn't find a way to integrate it into their budget. So they pretty much walked away. But we had a wonderful, wonderful provost at the time, very community oriented. His name was Ralph Miwang, Dr. Miwang. And so he basically said, we're going to take them. No more money. That's right. We're going to take, the idea of what it was to do fits with the community college. It's about the adult learner getting himself back into society through education. So he took it on, no money, nothing. And that was the start of our presence. Because prior to that, Leeward Community College, the university, had no face out here at all. No institution of higher ed was out here. I think the only one out here with a face was Pinky Thompson from Kamehameha Schools. And never even have a Kamehameha School program out here. They even were invisible. Everybody was invisible when it came to education. So we took it on, and then from that period until the 2000s, we pretty much were temporary residents. We weren't even squatters. We rented space. And that's a very tenuous, it's a very,
Unstable.
to be in, because going through budget cuts, reorganization, all that kind of stuff, sight unseen, easier to get rid of. So there's always that stress. And yet, there was a value this community had to the campus and to the system. And that value was measured in millions, because they would write their grants based on the condition of the lack of education in this community that's supposed to be part of their area of service. That's fraud, yeah? So they would get the money, but the money wouldn't be invested out here. I got so mad one time with the Vice Chancellor of Community College Student Services, Mike Rhoda, because we wrote a vocational education grant, 5-year funding, and a key full-time position was for an assessment evaluator. And he was going to measure how the Hawaiians are performing against all other ethnic groups. I said, what the hell are you doing that? You're going to measure, so you guys going to get data on how these other guys are doing. So, that's when I first saw what was happening with our commitment to the Hawaiians out here. And so when I came out here, I experienced the neglect. The building we were in, Walter B. told me, the afternoon sun, so hot, and our facility was all glass, yeah. So she had asked for blinds. They told her, they have film. Film is enough. And then the other thing was the women's restroom never had air vent. And the mechanical vent we had was broken for the whole year. But that's just one. So what happened, how it got to me was, my office was right across from the women's restroom, and my door, I don't shut my door. In fact, I'm known as a person who has no doors. I used to take out doors, take them off. So, yeah. And so I smelled the stuff. And I said, what the hell is, this not doable. So I would call the school and ask for help. Can you guys come and fix this damn fan? The staff told me, we tried, Lucy, but nothing. I said, well, maybe I can try too. So I would try. Fix them. So I called the health department because I'm very resourceful. That's one of the things I am. So I called the health department and I said, you folks have a standard for air in a room, a public room that has no exterior window nor an exterior vent? He says, yes, we do. I said, okay, I have a
Do you ever
room.
report a
Yeah,
violation?
so I said, okay, I have a room. Here's our address. But before you come, let me call my employer. So I called the school, the facility guys, and I told them, you know what? I gave you guys a chance. I called these guys, and you guys are in violation. So they sent the crew out, fixed the vent. The next thing is the water. I'm always on water. So we had this janitorial closet that had a sink where you wash them up. Drip, drip, drip. So I asked the last student helper, when did she first notice that faucet dripping? She go, oh, Lucy, since January, I think. So I said, oh, so I counted months. I said, oh, that's all right, no matter. So I put one bucket underneath the faucet that has marks on it. And I leave them like that. And I check to see at the hour how much came out. Then I'm good at arithmetic. Yes, I do my multiplication. Now I call the school and I tell them, we're losing this much good water, drinkable water. We're losing every hour. And how many hours this week so far? How much for the month? That's a lot. And I come from a place where water is precious. So I tell them, the problem. My father went plumber, so I know the problem is just one washer. They tell me, oh, it's the landlord's problem. I said, no. Our landlord, I get the lease agreement in because I was the coordinator, I get that file. Says that according to the lease agreement, he's been giving you guys reduced rent for how many years? And this year we're supposed to pay X thousands of dollars, but we only gonna pay this amount. So you're telling me one 25-cent washer is not the same as this thousands of dollars we saving. They sent the crew out. They fixed the water.
So you can't make it make sense when you're looking at it, the receipt right in your face.
Yeah. Well, see, nobody knows. And worse off, the staff don't know because it's not like William Makama and Walter Beaton didn't report it. They did. But because they don't have all this other background that we're trained to do as, people come out of the university, how to not just take the surface, dig.
Yeah.
And
don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, so we got those. And then when it came to the blinds, that was the best one. I really enjoyed that one. So we have this annual visit by the administrative team. And they come and we have to serve, we have a meeting, then we serve lunch. So the lunch menu I had in mind was we were going to make sandwiches. But the sandwiches, I told them, we're going to cut the crust off. Okay, put them on the platter and have the table push up against the window. We have this meeting. The meeting goes on for like 2-3 hours. Oh, we have lunch for you folks, we could only afford sandwiches. So if you don't mind, we go down to the learning center area and we'll have our sandwiches. So they go there, the damn bread is toasted. Well, we don't need blinds, right? You guys can eat toasted bread. Yeah, so we got blinds. Yeah.
Awesome.
It would work.
Yeah, so you can do things without having to be a what I call Mau activist. You can do it with humor. You can do it with embarrassment. In other words, it's a nice way of saying make ass out of them.
Yeah.
You guys said it was good enough for us or good enough for you too. Yeah.
Awesome.
But that's the part I love about this facility is we were able to get it permanent. And we have lots of room for expansion. And what's beautiful is Danny talks about community. It's not just a space for academics. He's trying to incorporate what can we do for community to access the space. So we've got people thinking in the right direction. Yeah.